watching ABC 7 News at 4.
Well, the state's ports are knocking on Washington's door to hand over tens of millions of dollars for maintenance.
The maritime industry and political leaders say the money is there and it rightfully belongs to the ports, but Congress is refusing to give it to them.
ABC 7's Heather Ishimaru is live from the Port of Oakland with more for us. Heather.
California's Democrats and Republicans agree completely on this one. If there's nearly $6 billion sitting in the bank, the ports generated it, and the ports need it, why can't they have it? California's shipping channels are in desperate need of dredging and maintenance. Ships cannot come and go fully loaded unless the channels are maintained at a certain depth. Deferred maintenance means the problems have gotten bigger and more expensive. The money to do the work is there in the Federal Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, nearly $6 billion, but the feds won't release it.
Why they do it is the fuzzy math that drives everyone crazy in this state and across the nation. They use it because it offsets some federal obligations and makes the deficit look smaller.
There's now a bipartisan effort at the state level to get the money released. Today, representatives from ports all across the state joined Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom at the Port of Oakland to make their case. The money in the trust fund comes from shippers and carriers who pay a user fee at the nation's ports. California's ports contribute $400 million a year, or about 40% of the fund's annual revenues. Getting that back into the state for port maintenance would keep the ports competitive and create jobs.
Carriers don't mind paying it, shippers don't mind paying it if they get something in return for that dollar. Putting all the money in the bank and sitting on it is not spending it.
The state says $200 million a year would get the channels where they need to be.
We don't need all the money that's collected in California, but we could use 30 to 40% of it, maybe even as much as 50% up front. And then as we get the channels dredged and maintained, we probably don't need as much year after that.
Newsom says the World Economic Forum ranks the U.S. as 18th in port infrastructure. He fears if we don't invest in staying competitive now, it could someday be too late to ever catch up. In Oakland, Heather Ishimaru, ABC 7 News.
A bipartisan effort is underway to wrestle millions of dollars from the federal government and into the hands of the state's ports. Those ports are in dire need of maintenance and upgrades, but are being denied access to a trust fund set up for that very thing. ABC 7's Heather Ishimaru reports.
When it comes to funding the state's ports, California's legislators are presenting a united front to Congress. Democratic State Senator Mark DeSaulnier from Concord and Central Valley Republican Gene Fuller co-sponsored a resolution calling on Congress to release money from the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, which now totals nearly $6 billion.
Now you got Republicans and Democrats, and trust me, it's tribal up there. You have no idea how tribal it is in Sacramento. Actually did a joint resolution saying we get it, we need to do something about this.
The trust fund collects user fees from port customers. California's many ports contribute about $400 million a year, or 40% of the fund's annual revenues, but receives only about 4%. Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom says the feds don't want to give the states control of the account.
Why they do it is the fuzzy math that drives everyone crazy in this state and across the nation. They use it because it offsets some federal obligations and makes the deficit look smaller.
Today, representatives from ports all across the state joined Newsom at the Port of Oakland to make their case. Shipping channels need to be maintained at certain depths so ships can come and go fully loaded. Deferred maintenance means many channels need work. Releasing the funds would create jobs and keep the ports competitive.
Carriers don't mind paying it, shippers don't mind paying it if they get something in return for that dollar. Putting all the money in the bank and sitting on it is not spending it.
The state says one upfront release of $200 million would help the ports get back on track.
We don't need all the money that's collected in California, but we could use 30 to 40% of it, maybe even as much as 50% up front. And then as we get the channels dredged and maintained, we probably don't need as much year after that.
Newsom says the World Economic Forum ranks the U.S. as 18th in port infrastructure. Without the necessary funding, that ranking could soon be even lower. Heather Ishimaru, ABC 7 News.
Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom and Port of Oakland officials say the federal government is sitting on more than $5 billion meant for the nation's ports.
We in California generate the lion's share of that revenue. but we get a de minimis amount back because they've allowed, again, that surplus to grow without reinvesting those dollars.
The Federal Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund could help pay for dredging and maintaining the Port of Oakland. Every year, port customers in California pay more than $400 million in fees that go into that federal fund.